What's up, everyone? This is DeagleBeagle. So, I'm going to show three different kinds of Dondozos. Now, you might want to EV it a little bit differently. I wouldn't call myself a Dondozo expert for sure. It's not my specialty. But I do feel like the top three Tera types with it are Grass, Flying, and Steel. Originally, Steel used to most likely be the best Tera because they would just brainlessly try to clear smog it. Maybe not, I shouldn't say brainlessly, but it's like, why would you rely on clear smog when they could just Tera Steel? Especially since Tera Steel is resistant to Flower Trick from Meowscarada. And, like, that's another thing. Why would you rely on Meowscarada to counter Dondozo? It doesn't counter any Dondozo unless they can't Terra because they already, I don't know. Yeah, just because some other Pokemon Terra'd before it. Maybe I could kind of see that. Um, I mean, I can kind of see Meowscarada. It's there to like force it to Terra, and then once you make them change their typing, you can hit them super effectively with your ally once you know their Terra type. And in open team sheets, again, I mentioned how that was an issue where they know your Terra type. So if they know, let's just say they know it's Steel. So if Meowscarada like flower tricks you to force you to Tera Steel, they could use a fire move or a ground move or a fighting move right after, and for sure super affect you with one of those two moves if they survive. So Dondozo to me seems really overrated for OTS, but I think as a result, people that are smart or that have used it a lot in OTS aren't going to pick it for San Diego for a regional because why would they? I mean, it's good, still pretty good, but it's like so much easier to counter once you know what kind of Dondozo it is. Okay, so anyways, I mean, not just that, but you know the moves, you know the item. Like Dondozo relies a lot on secrecy, so open team sheets is gonna screw it over. Anyways, Steel is pretty good. You can use different EVs, like I said, and moves than I'm using, but I'll explain each one actually, one by one. I prefer usually to not use any speed with Dondozo because, in my opinion, it's like, what does it need speed for? You're either gonna get outsped by certain things anyways, or I mean, I just prefer bulk with it to keep it alive for longer. But it depends. I could see an argument where you would want to outspeed like Haze from Gengar or whatever, but it's like stuff like that. Like there's a million ways to counter Dondozo. Haze Gengar is just one way, and it's like you could EV it all those EVs just to counter Haze Gengar, but then lose to everything else more if you give it more speed than it actually really needs. So I don't know. I've never really felt like I needed more than 110 speed. It has 110 speed once the speed gets doubled. I mean, I've only felt like I needed it if I was using like order up with like stretchy Tatsu Giri to maybe outspeed a few things, but I mean they could just have Trick Room or Tailwind up anyways. So it's like I don't know the point. Like the other thing with EVing it is it's hard to say how you should EV it, but since it already has high HP, you might want to just max out the special defense instead, unless you need that little extra defense in a sense to wall physical hits. Um, by defense, I mean more HP is as if it's like you're increasing the defense in a sense. It helps you wall physical attacks better. On some sets, I do recommend maybe some HP if because you need HP to wall a wave crash, especially if you're not leftovers or you don't have rest to recover your HP. So let's go into that. So Dondozo, let's just assume worst case scenario, it's wave crash. Wave crash wasn't even that common at first, I think, until, I mean, for some reason people prefer liquidation, I think, because they didn't recoil a ton. But people, I think, prefer wave crash now because they want to kill something before they hit it with something that could really hurt Dondozo, and they might have a recovery move too with it, like rest. So some people may prefer wave crash, other people don't. It just depends. But almost nobody uses liquidation. Instead of that, they would probably use something else, like order up. I should even do a fourth one with. I'll have to fix this. Oops, I'll have to fix the set in a minute. But it's a dragon one. It has order up. Okay, so Dondozo versus Dondozo that has busted its Tera already. Let's just say it's Tera Steel. Wave crash. Wait, I thought it does more than that. Okay, maybe I calced it wrong at first. But I thought for some reason wave crash could 3-hit KO it. I think I was forgetting about unaware when I had thought that. Yeah, so then I don't think there's probably a point to use HP unless you need to wall physical attacks a little bit better, like from, I don't know, Sacred Sword Gallade or something, but normally I would probably just make it bulky all the way around because it's so much more efficient when it already has high HP sometimes to max out the special defense instead of the HP, because this would only be, look, 257 divided by, oh yeah, I already showed it. It's only 13.2 something percent more in a sense defense and special defense. But if you go from, if you take a 117 divided by 85, that's 37%, more than 37% more in a sense, like special defense. So special attacks, I will say, are probably less common in general in this format, or at least that I've seen versus Dondozo. But you do have the thunderbolts, the grass moves, the etc. Okay, so here's one kind of Dondozo. You have wave crash, you have leftovers to help recover against the recoil and it getting hit in general. You have fissure for the mirror. This one actually won't beat the flying one. It won't beat the flying one. So, like I was saying earlier, so you may actually want. Let's look at avalanche. Avalanche. Wait, what? Why is it 60? Oh, really? It calcs it as 120? Oh, I didn't. Okay, there. Wow. Okay, it's because it's water, that's why. So, actually, you should probably use avalanche with this and not, well, you could use fissure for the non-flying one. But then, you would have to use a different type of one. Instead of wave crash, you might have to use avalanche. But then, if you use avalanche, you don't have a strong hitting move in general against stuff. So actually, I'm going to change this instead of rest talk with leftovers. I don't know really about rest talk anyways. It feels like you don't have enough moves to run that. It might just call the wrong move and rest anyways, or target the wrong poke. So maybe this is only since some Dondozos might be flying. I think you should use a Dondozo that counters nearly all the Dondozos. So let's make it this. Avalanche, Rest, Lum. You can use Chesta if you want to, but I feel like Lum might be better because they might wisp you, for example, before you hit, and you might really need to hit at full power that turn or something. And Steel would make Steel with Lumberry makes you counter Amoonguss really well, and you can always rest if they're about to spore you the turn after that, and recover HP in general. So this counters almost all Dondozos. You should be able to two-shot their Dondozo usually, or almost two-shot it. And chances are you might be able to kill them before they get a fissure off. So I think this would be pretty good. I think Avalanche is the most underrated move with Dondozo by far, because it's good versus the mirror and other stuff. But that's more of a recent thing. Like, people weren't using Tera Flying Dondozo normally until recently. It's been a lot more common. Now, if you're using Dragon, the main point of Dragon, I feel like, is for a stab order up. And order up used to be a really common move with Dondozo, like possibly the most common move, until people realized you don't really necessarily need order up. If you're using order up, I would generally use the attack raising Tetsugiri, which I think is Curly, the orange one, because that way you'll raise your attack and counter intimidates and stuff. And you may want Defiant on the same team as Dondozo to deter them from even picking their Intimidate Pokemon. And then, okay, we might have to change this set to, how would you beat Clear Smog? I think every single Dondozo needs a way to beat Clear Smog. So you either need Tera Steel, or you need Substitute, or you need to kill it with Tera Flying. Okay, but I would say there should be no Dondozo that loses to Amoonguss. It's too common. And there's other Pokemon that get Clear Smog too. Anyways, Sub blocks the Spore and the Clear Smog unless they have a faster Pokemon that breaks the Sub or taunts you or whatever, and then they go for the Clear Smog. But at least you beat them most of the time. So order up, and then Fissure does counter the mirror. But the problem with Fissure, I feel like, is that if they use Substitute, it doesn't if they use Substitute, it may not counter. That's why before I've used, like, to counter the Dondozo Mirror, where it's like Fissure won't really work because they'll just use Sub, and as far as I know, Fissure breaks the Sub, but it doesn't kill them on through the Sub. It's like for the mirror, you might sometimes want max HP, so you have a better chance with leftovers of beating it. Because if you use max special defense, you might barely lose, but if you have max HP, you're more likely to beat the mirror. It depends on what you want to do. If you're focused a lot on the mirror, or if you're focused on everything else. So you might beat the mirror, but then you might do worse versus everything else if you use max HP. But you will also be better against physical Pokemon though if you use max HP, so it's not all bad. I'm more inclined to run max HP if I'm using leftovers. But assuming they don't have Sub, then you probably would want to just use max special defense. But if they have Sub, or I guess even if they don't have Sub, it's like, I mean, actually, if that's the case, then you're really just probably in a fissure war trying to hit them first, and you can use Sub to try to block them from fissuring you. Hopefully they don't fissure you before you get a Sub up. I don't know, the Dondozo Mirror is crazy, but I feel like the Mouse Ape Mirror is even more toxic. So You could try a set like this, but actually that wouldn't even beat the flying one necessarily. It might, um, actually, I think it would beat, no, it would beat the flying one because you would have sub to block their fissure, and you could either wave crash or probably order up, kill them faster than they could kill you. Okay, so you might even want max HP though on it if you did try to really focus on beating the mirror. If you're using substitute and not rest 2, I'm more inclined to run max HP for that reason. Okay, so anyways, the EVs, you can put it how you want. I'm mostly going to focus on the moves and item. So, we already went over this one. And then the Tera Flying one, I feel like is... I'm not going to say it's overrated, but like if people really wanted to counter that, they could use Cobra Berry Amoonguss or something. So it's like just assuming that you're gonna, I mean, or they could Tera, actually they don't even need Cobra Berry. They could just Tera water or rock their Amoonguss and wall that, and then depending on your item, they could either spore you or clear smog you. If you didn't have Tera Grass and you didn't have sub and you didn't have lum, then they might just spore you and then clear smog you the following turn, or just clear smog you that same turn. So what's the next one? This Tera Flying Blast does give you decent coverage as well, so it's not all bad. It's kind of hard to wall it like that. And then this one I feel like is the most interesting and the most underrated, possibly the Tera Grass one. I was thinking at first that the only good Dondozo is Tera Steel, but I didn't. When I was thinking of that, I didn't think so much about the mirror, and the mirror does matter a lot. So I feel like the main thing with Dondozo is countering the mirror, preventing them from resetting your stats, and preventing them from giving you a status condition. If you can do all of that, then your Dondozo set is probably pretty good. That's why almost all the good ones should run either or rest, sub or rest basically, and or a lumberry. I mean, this one, I feel like though if they have a faster Will-O-Wisper somehow than your Dondozo, if you're using the substitute, then they could wisp you before you get a substitute up, so that might be a decent argument to run more speed if you're using substitute. But I normally just run no speed and hope that I outspeed whatever is using Will-O-Wisp. Okay, or that they miss. Okay, but it's probably safer to use a rest one, especially a rest lum one for that if you're worried about that. But Wisp is common, it's not super common. Okay, so anyways, this one, Tera Blast with the grass type is good for the mirror. So you basically force them to Tera. And let's say they're Tera Flying, then you hit them with Avalanche. If they keep their typing as water, you hit them with Tera Blast Grass, and that'll hit them really hard. And if they Tera, let's say Steel, then you can wave crash them, and you're not forced to Tera probably yourself versus them, unless they also are grass. Then you might have to Tera Grass just to wall them, and then you can avalanche them, and they're basically forced to hit you. That's why avalanche is great in the mirror, because they're forced to pretty much hit you or sub or something, or protect. But if they're gonna hit anyone, it's gonna eventually have to be you and not your ally, because they can't hit Tatsugiri. So so this has really good coverage. But as far as the best Dondozo, I think it really depends on your team, how you want to use it. Like, you might use different EVs than me in different moves and stuff. These are just some ideas. These, I'd say, are the 4 best ones. I'd say the worst one out of the 4 is probably Dragon, because the main bonus of Dragon is that you get a more powerful order up, but like, you don't really need that a lot of the time. And I don't know, Dondozo and other mirrors are so common, at least on Showdown, that like your boosts aren't even gonna matter. Like, yeah, it's not gonna matter. And then, by the way, some people still use Earthquake with Dondozo, which is pretty decent overall at getting a decent amount of spread damage and decent coverage with it. But I feel like Earthquake isn't quite worth a slot normally, because I mean, it is if you're trying to use it that way just to get a ton of spread damage, but like, it doesn't really help you specifically counter almost anything that's trying to kill Dondozo, like a big threat to Dondozo. And Wave Crash is already, in a sense, 180 power, versus Earthquake, which is really unstab. 75 plus 75 is 150, so it's like you would do more damage with Wave Crash. Yes, it would recoil, but you just do, more damage with it. But Earthquake is better in some cases where like they have a small amount of HP left. You can finish them off and hit their ally with a decently hard hit at the same time, in like the same turn. That's something that Wave Crash can't do, and Wave Crash is vulnerable to like Storm Drain from Gastrodon, and recoil is the main issue with Wave Crash though. And they might protect with the right Pokemon. Instead of Earthquake, you could just hit something no matter what protects. But problem with Earthquake is they might have a flying Pokemon or a grass Pokemon that resists Earthquake anyways. I usually don't prefer it. Fissure is pretty good for the mirror, but other than the mirror, you probably wouldn't use Fissure that much. Okay, I think this has been a pretty extensive Dondozo guide. I just want to talk about really quick Tatsugiri with it. I prefer a Choice Scarf one with max speed timid, because it's like, why are you gonna risk the speed tie if you're already so worried? What I don't get is why people are so worried about the Dondozo mirror, but then they're not also worried about the Tatsugiri mirror. It's like, well, obviously you should be, I mean, I would think it's obvious you should be worried about both, because after you kill the Dondozo, then you have to worry about Tatsugiri. And what if you both kill each other at the same time? Then it's like, or around the same time, then it's like you need to outspeed their Tatsugiri. You probably would want to outspeed their Tatsugiri, unless you could run a sash set with it to survive their hit and stuff with Icy Wind. That is actually possibly better, but I think the Scarf set might be on average the best one to outspeed and finish off whatever Dondozo didn't kill. You could also outspeed Dragapult with the Timid set. And then the 4th move, probably Dragon Pulse, just in case you don't want to lower your special attack or miss. Because Dracometer and Icy Wind and Muddy Water all can miss. Icy Wind very rarely, but it's more with Dracometer and Muddy Water is you might miss with it. So, or you could use Sash with Dracometer, Icy Wind, Muddy Water, and Protect. And maybe Dragon type is the best, Terra type or Water, probably one of the two for the offensiveness of it. Unless you want to run like Fairy with it just to survive a Dragon hit, but typically that's not how I would use it. with Scarf, you want to probably outspeed and kill them before they use a dragon move on you. Whatever move they're going to use on you. Okay, thanks for watching. Any advice or comments are appreciated.